that we will all be working for good things for Cumberland County. And we are, anxious to hear all you have going on already. You really seem to be moving forward quickly. So thank you for having the opportunity to listen and to work with you.
Thank you, Representative Wheatley. I'll go ahead and move to remarks from our Vice Chairwoman Jones.
Just wanted to say good morning, and I'm glad that everyone's here. We know the importance of partnership with the legislators as well as with our community stakeholders. So glad that we can all be here today to discuss some concerns for Cumberland County and that of how we can collaborate together to continue to have our growth in our community. So welcome, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. And we want to quickly, before we start, give you a little year in review, see what's happened, what's happened across the county on multiple levels, some of the investments that you've helped us with, as well as just other great things that have happened across our county in the last year. So if we can go ahead and start that would be great. I'm not sure who was doing that.
Danny, if you want to help me get this teed up. Oh, you got it here. Okay. You got it?
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We've got a few new faces on our commission since then, so I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves very briefly. Commissioner Tyson, I'll yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Henry Tyson. I'm one of the representatives for District 2 on Cumberland County Board of Commissioners, and it's an honor to be here and to serve this community, and looking forward to today's discussion. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Patel, I yield the floor to you.
Thank you. I'm Pavan Patel, Commissioner from District 2 as well, and excited to be here. It's a good morning and look forward to working with our state delegation and get some things done for Cumberland County.
And Representative Wheatley, I think you make some introductions as well. I know you've got one new face, but there's others that can make introductions as well.
Absolutely, and I'd like for our entire delegation to introduce themselves, starting with the senator.
Okay, good morning. I'm Senator Val Applewhite, represent Senate District 19, which encompasses pretty much most of Fayetteville and a little bit of Hope Mills. Glad to be here. It's my second term.
Good morning, everyone. Charles Smith. I represent House District 44. Like Senator Applewhite, entering my second term. District is fully encompassed within the Fayetteville city limits. It's downtown Fayetteville, and then it heads out west toward Westover High School, up along the Murchison corridor, and south toward Cape Fear Valley, Village Drive, that area. Looking forward to the conversation, and thanks you all for hosting us.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Representative Mike Colvin, North Carolina House District 42, which encompasses northwest Cumberland County, the town of Spring Lake, Fort Liberty, portions of Fort Liberty, and Fayetteville. Look forward to today's discussion, as I'm sure we're all here in collaboration to make our county a better place.
Thank you. And we'll go ahead and I'd ask Commissioner Faircloth, go ahead and make your introduction. I know most people know who you are, but.
I'm Marshall Faircloth. I'm kind of new around here. I'll get used to most of your faces. Really, I've been around off and on about 36 years, and so looking forward to another at least 40. So anything I can do for y'all, let me know. And I sure do appreciate the relationship that we have with our fine delegation. And Diane, I know you'll lead it. And one thing y'all were remiss about, Senator McGinnis was at our agricultural breakfast this morning. He got up in the dark, drove all the way down here in the rain, and then had to go to his medical procedure. So that's the reason he's not here. That's, you know,
Thank you.
we were comparing our hip injuries. So.
Commissioner Adams, I'll yield the floor to you, although with that last video, I think everybody knows who you are.
And I've had the pleasure of working with just about everybody in the room, so thank you all for being here this morning for the best of Cumberland County.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and start our presentation now. Before I do that, I'd like to yield to County Manager Greer. Any comments, opening comments? And
No opening
everybody's
comments.
met our county manager. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, again, just want to welcome the delegation here. Thank the staff for all the work that they put into helping us put this together. Behind the scenes, y'all have done the bulk of the work, and we're very thankful for that. Again, to the delegation, thank you for taking time to be here this morning. Most importantly, thank you for your past support, both from a policy standpoint as well as from a funding standpoint. And let me just start by saying we clearly understand the needs in Western North Carolina. But as we heard this morning, a disaster is a disaster. And so I just ask, we're very deliberate as we move forward that we still need to continue to look at the needs, especially as we talk about Tier 1 communities. I know it will be a balancing act for you up there in Raleigh, so we just ask for you to remember that. Today is really, we're going to talk about Cumberland County needs specifically. You know, we are Tier 1 county with a low tax base. And we're going to talk about targeted policies and targeted funding that will help us gear and move that economic prosperity in our community. We also are very mindful that as we ask for state dollars, that you see that we're using a blended model. And what I mean by that is that it's state dollars, it's local dollars, and then we're looking to leverage federal and grant dollars. So understand you're not the only ask, but you're a part of the overall funding stream. And while there's a lot of statewide policies and funding that we could advocate for, and what I mean by statewide, that it affects all 100 counties, we're going to stay focused here locally, and so our commitment to you is as bills move forward, because I know that some don't always move forward. As bills move forward, our staff will actively monitor those, and as we see opportunities for us to engage with you on state level policy or funding, we'll reach out in the form of a letter, a resolution, or those types of things to make sure you know where your county stands. And if you ever need to know where we stand on an issue, please reach out to us and we'll confer as a board and try to provide you a unified voice, because I understand that's important as you serve up in the delegation. So again, we'll go ahead and get started. A little bit about previous funded projects. So $500,000 for Rhodes Pond. Capital improvement, that was geared towards NC Wildlife Resource Commission, but that helped with our parking lots and bathrooms. Our Methodist University stream restoration, over $2 million for that. The design and permitting has been completed. Pre-construction meeting was held in January, and we expect the project to be completed with all funds obligated the middle of this year, so June of this year. The Unhoused Support Center, formerly called the Homeless Support Center, when it was funded, $1 million towards the capital costs for this center. We've encumbered about 3/4 of that, so about $750,000. And this funding has been used for site assessments, surveys, and pre-construction services. And then we always want to remember our smaller municipalities. The town of Linden, we're appreciative of the $100,000 from the SCIP, the State Capital and Infrastructure Fund, that helped them with some parks and recreation activities there. And then lastly, while it didn't come to us or through us, the Grays Creek water infrastructure through PWC, $12 million. We're very appreciative of that. And you're going to hear a lot about water as we talk safe and regulated water as we talk through this this morning. So just wanted to always thank you for what you've done before we begin to ask you for the future needs. So thank you. Just a quick picture on where our priorities are, our strategic priorities. So earlier in January 30 and 31st, actually Senator Applewhite as well as Representative Wheatley stopped by, and thank you both for attending and showing your support. But we outlined, normally have 6, we've increased that to 7. So fostering economic prosperity, encouraging quality smart development, ensuring a safe community, enhancing health and wellness, increasing cultural and recreational opportunities, a responsive, transparent government. And the last one we added, and it's unique a lot of times for a county board, supporting a high-performing education system. We know that if we don't invest in our education system here, that is a level playing field for the children in this community, and we know we need to be supportive of that, and we wanted to push it forward as a priority to show what matters to us and what matters to this board. But as we looked at the focus from that strategic planning, a lot of the conversation was around that Tier 1 status. How do we move from Tier 1 to Tier 3? And you all know the elements that play into building that status. A lot of conversation around education funding. How do we fund our school systems from a facility and infrastructure standpoint? So renovation, rehab, maintenance, as well as new construction that we know we need, and we'll talk about that more. Water and sewer, a lot of conversation. We know that we're going to need to expand water and sewer across this community, and so that was a topic of conversation. Mental health, both from a youth and adult, was another focus point for us, as well as public safety and the things that we're doing. We talked some about workforce housing. We know, and I sat through your meeting with the county, or with the city of Fayetteville. We know we internally have some things that we can do at the county level from a workforce housing, from regulatory and development and things like that. And we're committed to looking at that as we begin to then reach back out to you on how you can help us as well. So that gives you a snapshot of everything that we're going to speak to today from a policy or a funding standpoint speaks to these priorities. So let's get right into it. We're going to start with our local funding request. So the first one, $65 million for a new state-of-the-art school. I think hopefully recently you've seen the article that was published in the news media about our meeting last Friday with the school board. Over $800 million of maintenance, renovations, and new school construction. I mean, they've got a very detailed list of the schools, what the needs are, and that's over about 7 years. So what we're looking at is, and you should have in your packet a detailed explanation around this with our agenda that kind of speaks to the Cumberland County Schools Comprehensive Needs Study and Facility Planning, and I know you met with them as well. Identified 2 schools. We'll speak to the E.E. Smith as a critical infrastructure. You know, this strategic investment prioritizes us in a Tier 1 community, but also our military community as well. The estimated total cost for a new state-of-the-art school is about $130 million. And so our ask is at $65 million. Again, we're going to blend those funding sources. That's less than 8% of the total funding required that we're going to have to invest, or we've been asked to invest in the school infrastructure. And that's not even talking about teacher supplements, which I'll talk about when we get to the policy side. So $65 million total cost, total investment from the school infrastructure portion. And I'll stop and ask the delegation if they have any questions. Yes, sir.
Something briefly. I'm just curious. I don't know this, but what percentage of E.E. Smith students are military connected? I mean, I guess 65 million coming from the state, 130 overall. That's half. It may be unique to seek federal funding for a state-supported school, but in this instance, with Fort Liberty not having a high school on base, I think it would make a little sense, especially if there's a percentage of E.E. Smith students who are military connected, to seek federal funding. Or has that conversation been had? Is that something you're considering?
Representative Smith, it has. We've had those conversations. The previous boards have had those conversations with Fort Liberty. I met with the garrison commander last week to have some conversations around a direction, funding sources. Is it land? Is it other items? We'll continue those conversations. Now, when we look at this $65 million, while we want to give you something tangible, there's really a need for really 2 new schools. So you could look at 35 and 30 if you wanted to, however we want to look at it. It's the overall investment of $805 million is less than 8% of that overall investment. Looking at from a Tier 1 county, the low tax base that we have, trying to ensure that we have the funding to invest in that infrastructure. I'm not sure of the percentages, but we can get that percentage unless one of the staff has it. I want to say it's around, you know what it is, Commissioner?
I do not know, but I will tell you when we had conversations with General Donahue, is that they would redirect just about all of their students to the new E.E. Smith. So it would probably be the bulk of whatever students they have, they were going to redirect to that school.
Vice Chairman Jones.
And I also would like to say at the last school board meeting that we did have, one of the things that Dr. Connolly, the superintendent, he had mentioned in regards to when you stated about federal funding, that is something they're keeping an eye on due to the fact that, with the new transition in legislators as far as in Washington, their possibility of different fundings might go a different direction. So that will be an impact affected that we're not quite sure of in regards of what will be provided and what will not for the overall state and education for North Carolina with federal fundings. They stated to us that they're keeping a large eye on that particular piece of things for funding.
Representative Wheatley, did you have something?
Yeah, I do. Knowing how many students are out at, I don't know the numbers anymore, but Linden Oaks, and that number, wondering, because I would think a whole lot of their students have gone to I guess that's Anderson Creek School. I would be very interested to know how many of the students on Fort Bragg are actually in Linden Oaks, and they live out there now, so that sending them all back to E.E. Smith would be, I think, vital in securing this number, knowing they're going to do that.
And we'll work with our school board, Representative Wheatley, to make sure that we get that information where we're focused on how we can support the school system with this needed investment, way overdue investment. And again, it's multiple schools, 2 new schools, but multiple renovation and maintenance. Senator Applewhite, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This may be a question that perhaps the school board could answer, but has there been any discussion about consolidating schools? I visited many of these schools that are 1950s, and I'm wondering, as we expend so much money to update the infrastructure, has there been a conversation saying, hey, we can't keep patching up these old schools and consolidating them?
Excellent question, Senator Applewhite. It's actually one that Commissioner Tyson brought up with our school board on Friday, and we pressed them on the timeline for redistricting and repurposing of the schools. That's their next step, and they committed to us to do that. It's about a 6-month process. And so our thoughts were we would continue. The funding's probably not going to change that much in the big picture, but it allows us with our manager and our staff to begin to look at how we invest that. But their commitment to us is they are going to look to repurpose and redistrict over the next 6 months, engaging the community and going through this process. And I know that the school board and the school system could get you more information on that. But that was one of our direct questions. If we invest this, we've got to reprioritize.
Yeah, because in our discussion, we talked about HVAC needs and just the physical appearance of the buildings. I think that the results of that assessment is important before we start to say how much money we're going to spend to fix stuff that's beyond their lifespan, perhaps.
And they gave us a very detailed report,
Yes.
Senator Applewhite. I'm sure we can get y'all a copy of it. We'll ask the school system to get you a copy. And it breaks down by system, by school, the investment. So the consolidation, that was our question. We want to be committed to focusing and preparing the funds as they begin to repurpose. And it may change the dollars, but not significantly, because there's always going to be something in that 8th year that we've got to fix.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Colvin?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Almost called you mayor. I'm sorry.
No. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, the ask, I know it's best to be proactive as opposed to being reactive, and this is something that has been brewing a long time. But I just have a question to the county's knowledge or in determining a site location for the proposed E. Smith. And that will be the first of a series of questions. And I always ask this question. And then the next question now, is six roses in one hand and a half a dozen in the other. But in choosing a new a site for an institution, has everyone, and I'm sure you have, looked at when is the last time that we actually built a new facility in the city of Fayetteville, which is in Cumberland County. And it's all inclusive of this great community. So.
Thank you, Representative Colvin. As far as the site, we're still having conversations internally about that site. And it's one of the questions that the school board asked us. We'll go back, as you know, this board voted not to move. Previous board voted not to move forward at the Stryker location, and so we're going back and having conversation. Our first step, as I told them on Friday, is we needed to understand the total dollar amount that we're being asked to look at, and then we'll continue to look at sites and opportunities for different sites, and there's still work to be done there as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Vice Chairwoman?
Thank you. I would say this, Representative Colvin, I don't know exactly the year, but my understanding is, I guess, as far as high schools, the newest school would be Grays Creek. I know it's Jack Brett, and then Grays Creek would be, I don't know exactly the time frame, but that's probably the newest school that has been built for this particular area for Cumberland County.
Well, now, when, again, in the county, but my question was framed to within the city limits. When is the last time that we invested in the all-American city in building, educational institution? It was just a general question. It's just a general question.
Representative Colvin, we'll get you the information. What we were briefed is it's been about 20 years since we really invested in a new school in this county. And as you can imagine, we're focused on the county side, but we can get you the information on City of Fayetteville. Representative,
One
I'm
thing
sorry,
I-
Commissioner Tyson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing I'd like to add as well, so the replacement school of the 65 million is part of the greater infrastructure package that the school system presented to us. So
Sure.
the total need was around 806 million.
I
And
understand.
if this plan was adopted, it would be roughly a $50 million investment over every year for 7 years.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely. I just,
Representative Coleman.
no, you're fine, and we won't take too much time up with it. I just floated the question, in this all-American city, in the county, and I'm not being an advocate for the city or anything, but as you talk about a blended model, urban areas, qualify for federal funds, and it may fit the model, but we'll continue on in
Vice Chairwoman.
And just be mindful of that, city or county, a lot of reasons for that is based on, I don't want to get all into that, but as we all know, you have to think about planning and structure, and then you have to think about acres of where that's going to be located. So that's one of the benefits, I guess you could say, because more rural areas or county, as far as the amount of land that's required. Doesn't mean we can't find anything in the city, but just wanted people to be, mindful of that, of course, sometimes that's something that people always consider.
Sure, thank you.
Any other comments or questions around the education investment? Commissioner
Just a
Fairclough?
quick question to answer partially Representative Coleman's question. The terminology, and I know Diane's heard this, but chasing kids with buildings.
Right.
That's what school systems do. So it's where the population growth is, it's where new buildings have been built.
Thank you.
Out of necessity, not preference necessarily.
Thank you, Commissioner Fairclough. Anyone else? We'll go ahead and move to the next item. I'm trying to be mindful of everyone's time as we move through these. Grace Creek District Public Water Infrastructure, so $5 million. So this is what you've previously invested in. So when we look at the investments allocated to date, $30 million from the state, $10 million on the county side. To finish that direct project, there's still a gap, an additional gap, and so we're requesting the $5 million. Again, that is the phase 1 water expansion project for Grace Creek District to ensure sustainable access to safe and regulated water. Now, we have taken, you may have seen, we have taken some action to the two schools that are in Grace Creek. This board has directed, we're going to put filtration systems at each one of the schools. So while we're building out, which is the permanent solution that y'all have helped us with, we'll have a temporary solution so the children will be drinking safe and regulated filtered water at the schools. But this is the need to finish the infrastructure. Questions on that item? Representative Wheatley?
Thank you. I'm kind of surprised that this amount of money is needed. The senator worked on this, I worked on it. We went to see PwC, how much money do you need put in the pipes to Grace Creek schools? And we were given a figure, we got that money. You made sure that the grant held everything that they said they needed, and there's still not a ditch or a shovel full of dirt that's come out of the ground that I can see. So can you elaborate on the additional needed monies? Because as they dig those pipes, people can tie in if they want to. But they were assuring us last session that they had all the money they needed if we got them this $10 to $12 million, that they could start and it would be done. And I'm personally disappointed that at least somebody hadn't put a pipe in for half a mile or something, just starting. So I just would love to know what the additional funding, is it just cost because everything's more expensive? Is that the thing I'm going to get?
Representative Wheatley, I'm going to defer to our county manager to give you a better answer than I can give you. PwC is here as well. We've got representatives from PwC. They're always very supportive in our meetings as well. Not that I'm asking them to answer. County manager?
Yes, so it's more of a cost inflation and also including sewer. We just thought it wouldn't make sense to just do water and not build in sewer in that area based on the density and the projected growth in the population once water is secured in the area.
And just to tie into what Representative Wheatley was saying, I mean, and just moving forward, or it might be helpful to have some type of accounting. You know, I think it was a $12.5 million reward. How has that funding either been spent or allocated, just like, you know, itemized accounting? And then where are we, how are we going to use this $5 million, just so that when we go back to ask, you know, there's, you know, we can give a more detailed explanation for the need, and then maybe some certainty that, will this funding number continue to rise, I guess, in the future? Or is this with this $5 million, will we have completed that first phase, that initial phase?
So Representative Smith, we'll work with PwC and our staff. We'll put together kind of an overview on where it is of the phase one and get that back to the entire delegation. If that makes sense.
That's great.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to acknowledge, so our manager of natural resources is here, and we have been working as a government to look at and explore some of these options in the Grays Creek community. There has been a test well program that the previous commission put in place, and I know that they've been moving forward with that to look at capacity and availability there. So to Representative Wheatley's point, I think all of us want to see, you know, some dirt being moved, but we want to make sure that when we're spending the money that you've given us, which is the people's money, that it's spent judiciously and that it goes to a long-term solution.
Okay, could I just make a comment? And I will tell you, Commissioner Tyson, that I have learned a lot more about water. I know we all have. And not knowing that this would be something that we'd be dealing with again now. Thinking that that money that was designated for pipes to be run to the schools. So when I get back to Raleigh tomorrow, I'm going to find out what that grant says and make sure that we're not needing to do something. We all are going to be interested in that because it was really specific for PwC to run pipes to that area. Now we're going to do wells, and I think that's great. Get the water done, whatever y'all need to do. But we're still looking for a solution for that whole community. And that's the thing that we want to work on with you.
So Representative Wheatley, as we mentioned, we'll put together, hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, we'll put together some information that we can get back to you and arm you with what's happened in phase one. This is about the pipes in the ground. This is about safe and regulated water to these schools. That's what it's always been about, is creating that pipe that will feed the schools. And so you help fund that piece. But we will get you a detailed explanation of where we are, hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, because we understand the timeliness of it for you.
Thank you. And also knowing that people can tie into those, that should be part of it. I know that's without saying, if they want to, and how that is going to affect that community. But thank you. We look forward to that.
And we're going to have a larger conversation around water and sewer countywide. So it's not just, this is direct to Grays Creek. Vice Chairwoman.
Yes, this is just basically, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because we are being streamlined, and of course, no doubt, all areas of Cumberland County are important. So for the listeners out there, definitely we will be having a broader town hall that will be coming up to address the needs of water and basically in all areas, to include that over the river, Cedar Creek. There's a lot of concerns about that. So we are pleased that, and I can tell you this, not the date, but in March, we are definitely committed to making sure we have a town hall that will cover not just Grays Creek, which is important and significant, as well as the other areas, because most, definitely we want to make sure that all areas are covered, and that is one of our goals, is to have our town hall. World Water Day is, I do believe, the 31st or the 28th of March. We found that would be a great month to, make sure that we are on board with promoting safety of public water.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. Senator Applewhite.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to follow up on I've heard comments about well water and I know several members of the county, of your board are new, and during the last session, we had a meeting about water and wells, and there was no appetite in the legislature for well water, for funding of well water. We saw other communities that hundreds, Wilmington, $120 million because they were tapping into a system, but there was a discussion here in Cumberland about well water, and Senator McGinnis was pretty much very adamant about not getting federal money for well water. So I hope that whatever solution that the county decides upon, that we kind of have big discussions if well water is going to be your primary solution. Again, I was disappointed to see that we only got like 12.5 million for the water extension. That was the reason why when other counties were hooking into systems. So I just want to put that out there for new people.
Thank you, Senator Applewhite. Valid point, and we understand, and you won't hear as we talk about public water and sewer, you're not going to hear about wells.
Thank you.
So this is infrastructure that we're going to put in place. Any other questions around Grays Creek? If not, we'll go ahead and move to the next item, public water and sewer countywide infrastructure. So I want to tell you that there hasn't been a countywide, there was the last plan for countywide water and sewer was done in 2009. So this is a very focus of this board. We know that this is extremely important. It's been estimated to us that the cost of this countywide water and sewer to ensure that we have safe and regulated water for all our communities is about $1 billion to $1.4 billion. And I know you all know that when 2009 that price came out, it's a lot different now. But this is a critical step for us. I believe this board is committed to it. We talked about it in our strategic planning. I think you'll see the prioritization of our budget. This is an opportunity for the state, and this is one of the situations of funded the blended model. And I can let the county manager get into a little bit more details of it. But this is where we would look at local money, state money, federal money, other grants that may potentially be out there. We will scour that to make sure that the time frame to do $1 billion to $1.4 billion worth of work. We also understand that it's going to take time because of contractors and the ability to actually build it out with everything else that's happening in North Carolina and across the nation. So our ask is $50 million to help us in this effort and offset. It's a very small percentage of the $1 billion. But for us, what it's going to do as we look at how we're going to pay for this, quite frankly, how we're the financing plan that we're going to have to put together to do this and how we're going to service this long-term debt potentially. This will help us as we begin to build it out and understand from a planning standpoint and what we need to do, and it will, how we factor that. We gave you some, whether it's coming from SCIF or it's coming from DEQ or DWI or wherever it comes from or how it comes. Those are future conversations. We just wanted to make the ask of this. County Manager, anything that you want to add on that piece of it? But I will tell you that, we are still working out, we do not have that consolidated plan again, so that's our next step. We've been working with PwC to begin to kind of look at that, so we're partnering with our local, our local provider here, and we're beginning to look at what that looks like. We think it's important that while we're expanding water, that sewer at the same time. If you're, as the county manager said earlier, if you're expanding water, you might as well expand sewer at the same time. So that will be part of this as well. We know we've got an aging water and sewer infrastructure across this community. So that's our ask. I'll open it up for questions. Commissioners, any comments?
Mr. Chairman, and I will tell you that we had this conversation with most of the municipalities last year in the city of Fayetteville, and PWC are moving toward trying to get this countywide water. You know, it's always difficult. Years ago, when they turned down the USDA money to be able to do countywide water. So I applaud this board for taking that initiative and moving forward with it, because we've always talked about these septic tanks probably failing in Cumberland County. We are sandy kind of county. And who was that? I think it was Representative Colvin, who talked about being reactive as opposed to proactive. This is, I think, this board being proactive on that and moving forward, which is why we're asking for you all assistance on this matter.
And Mr. Chairman, I would just ask, you know, similar to the Grace Creek, that 12.5 and now the 5 million, with this ask, as you get more current figures and updates, just keep us involved so that when we're going and asking for these dollars, obviously the ask is a lot higher than what you're requesting from us right now. But so we can point out, so this is the total amount that needs to get done, and so we can tie this 50 million to specific itemized things, even though knowing that this is going to be a process. Just keep us in the loop and any updates you receive, any plans, strategic plans, anything like that, so that we can tailor this 50 million to you know, specific steps.
And Representative Smith, we would have liked to really come to you today with those exact details. We're 60 days in. Our county manager has been working fast and furious as he can, talking to PWC to make sure we begin to get a framework. So we wanted to come here today with, we know this is the total, this is an estimated total number, and this is a small part that we think y'all can help us on the front side as we begin to have to you know, build out the capital investment we're going to have to make over several years. Representative Wheatley and then Senator
Thank
Applewhite.
you. I just would love to also get with the information that we've been talking about, exactly what part of the county does not have water and sewer infrastructure, and what counties are coming into our county providing water, and are they providing sewer as well? I don't know the answer to the sewer, I do to the water, but I think that would be just some information that we could use when we go in to make our case.
And Representative Wheatley, our goal will be to answer that question. We're going to try to create a one-page fact sheet on each of these that we can arm you with, and then we'll continue to update it as we get additional information.
Thank you.
And we'll add in the questions that you had. Any other comments on, I'm sorry, Senator Applewhite?
Oh, you're fine. Thank you. I'm not an accountant and I don't do budgetary work, so to put that out there first. But when these projections, these requests, do you build in potential escalating costs? Like if we know we're not going to get to it in 7 years, projections that 50 million is really going to be 65 million. Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yes, we're building projections for future costs. The previous study did not provide that. Any study that we do from now on, we're going to look current and into the future also.
So these numbers right here take that into account?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And again, Senator Applewhite, these are a part of a funding stream to a bigger investment that this county is going to make. So our ask is really, we're not asking you to fund the total cost of a project per se that then is going to escalate. We're saying be one of our funding partners in this critical need for our community. So it's more of a funding stream and partner than it is, this is an XYZ project, it's going to cost $65 million, it's really going to cost us 70 at the end of it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions on that? We'll go ahead and move forward. So our next discussion on local funding is a regional aquatic center. The previous board and this current board, we had conversations around it at our strategic plan, committed to building a regional aquatic center. This is something that would impact the entire county. Let me be clear, we do not have a location for it. This is going to go towards pre-construction architectural designs. The current match right now with this county is we've set aside $2 million as well. So you'd be matching that dollar amount for a regional aquatic center. I don't need to educate you all on the benefits of an education center, or excuse me, an aquatic center the economic impact and those types of things that we see in this community. And what we've heard from our community is there's a need, which is why the previous board set up a committee around it. It will be a community committee. We'll have community stakeholders at the table and begin to go through that process. That the Vice Chairwoman Jones and I will lead that effort to make sure that this becomes a regional effort. I'll open that up for questions.
I do, Mr. Chair. We know that Hope County has a wonderful aquatic center, and they're right next door. So when we say regional aquatic center, help me understand the scope. What region are we talking about? Because Hope does have one.
They do. They have a nice facility. We were thinking something that is larger, but you also have access, so it's going to potentially, as you look at the Cape Fear River being a dividing line, and the connection of other communities across that, the connection to I-95, the studies that have been done previously for Parks and Recreations on having competitions there, the access to 95. So we feel we could be a regional, but first and foremost, impact the needs of our citizens first, while then we look at it from a regional impact from an economic standpoint to bring in competitions and bring those things instead of going to Winston-Salem and some others. Maybe we can use that I-95 corridor and 295 corridor to bring that right here to Cumberland County.
Thank you.
Vice Chairwoman Jones.
Thank you for that question, and we haven't actually had a meeting yet as the chair that's been assigned for this particular project. I am pleased to say that one good thing is we want to make sure when we do start establishing the framework that most definitely, as Chairman Devier stated, because it is going to involve that of other stakeholders and municipalities appointing people to be on that committee, we want to be mindful of that. And so when we speak of region, we're going to definitely make sure that we take in the input of all of the committee members when we are making these decisions, so that we can make sure that our community, we've been hearing a lot about that. There's a need, no doubt, and as he stated, we know the reasons why. So we're going to be very mindful, because it is for our community, that the input of all those that are on the board will be in consideration from the very beginning, from the framework. We will have a meeting coming up soon in the next 2 months. Will be our very first meeting.
Commissioner Adams.
Commissioner, Representative Applewhite, we heard from Senator Applewhite. See, I'm gonna get it all wrong. If you have one, we heard from Hope Mills, we heard from the city of Fayetteville that everybody was talking about doing an aquatic center, and that didn't make sense. And if all of these municipalities came together to build out a larger aquatic center for the entire county, that was one of the regional scope, is the whole county to be able to do that, as opposed to everybody building a smaller one. Second off, what we heard was swimming is one of the fastest growing sports in the Cumberland County school system and throughout this community. And our kids are swimming at outdoor swimming pools. That's when they're practicing at college lakes and all of these with a dome on it. Just didn't make sense to be able to do that. Then you look, I think where the chairman was talking about is, if that's the case, you're looking at Robeson County, Sampson County, all of these other counties who hold their competitions right here coming up 95 and 295 halfway, we can do a regional thing for the economic impact. Last thing I'd say is, we do know that the health outcomes in Cumberland County is probably some of the worst in the state. The state is some of the worst in the country. This gives us an opportunity to impact our citizens to be able to be a little bit healthier around this. So, and great for the city of Fayetteville who does those outdoor pools, but they're only a couple of months. This indoor aquatic center gives us a lot more feasibility to be able to do that, along with the two that the city has, which is the senior citizen and the Bill Chris. I think this board sees the economic impact and what it can do for this entire county and that region. Not necessarily competing with Hope County. Theirs is not quite big enough to do that regional kind of competition. If you've ever been over there and taken that, if you've taken the tour, ours hopefully will be of a little larger scale to be able to do that region and pull in those economic impact. Talking about, I think the chairman is exactly right. In order to get out of this tier one, you're gonna have to create an economic incentive within this county besides trying to do money off, revenue off the backs of taxpayers, homeowners. And so I think he's exactly right on that point. Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner Adams. Senator Applewhite, do you have a follow-up?
I'm good, no.
Anyone else? And one of the other reasons, one of the things that we talked about in our strategic plan, you're going to hear us use the word regional, because we believe that Cumberland County should be a regional leader. And so that's going to be our focus, especially with the footprint of the military that we have. So you're going to hear us speak to that a lot. We'll move forward to the next one, unless there's any other comments. So the next one is an Emergency Services Mobile Incident Command Unit. That's for our emergency services. So it is what it says. There's a $2 million ask to create it. We all know that, as we heard this morning, disaster is a disaster. This will continue to allow us to be prepared for these future disasters, but also create this mobile incident command unit that can be used not just by emergency services, but other agencies as well, whether it's State Highway Patrol connected to it, or fire service connected to it, we can connect into it that way. We're in the process of continuing to have discussions around, our 911 piece. This kind of gives how we work with the city to have county and city working together in a 911 center. This would be that mobile extension of it. And County Manager, before I go to you, Commissioner Tyson, anything I'm missing on that piece?
And like we saw in the western part of the state recently, you have to be able to be where the people are at and when they're affected. This would give us the ability, if we were to incur another hurricane, or to similar type of incident, where we can go meet people where they are and not be holed up in a building and address their needs.
And also, as Commissioner Tyson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of my duties that I have the pleasure of doing is being the fire commissioner and the sheriff's commissioner and the local emergency planning committee commissioner. So I've got to tour all of these institutions and got to see the current mobile command facility, the vehicle. And one of the things I wanted to comment on that is, having this asset as a land search asset, having it for if you have a woodland fire that breaks out is very vital. And the current vehicle is reaching its end of life. The functionality of it is kind of, because it's an older vehicle, is kind of geared towards, an older capacity. Whereas we're looking towards having different partners and different stakeholders that can utilize the asset in a crisis. So having a larger vehicle would be very helpful. Right now, the current one can only house a limited amount of personnel, which creates a conflict in and of itself. And I'd like to tie this in too, and I know we're going to talk about digital dispatch, but really this is all about our first responders being able to communicate effectively so that they can reach our citizens and our residents quickly and provide service. So this is a key component of that. We're going to talk about digital dispatch next, which is also a very important tool that we can put in our first responders toolbox. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions, Representative Smith?
Yeah, and this emergency services, it would seem to have the potential to really alleviate some of the bandwidth struggles from our first responders and municipalities. And I notice here, there's not a current match locally, but I would think this type of service would benefit. I know there's staff shortages across government employment. I know the sheriff's office has staff shortages, Fayetteville Police Department, Hope Mills Police Department, Spring Lake, I'm sure, and I don't know that any other municipalities have independent law enforcement agencies. But this type of service, I think is, you mentioned that regional word. I think it's a great step toward combining resources. And when we talk about investments could those conversations occur with those municipalities, because there's a real benefit there, and it could help alleviate some of that, some of the pressures they're feeling from staffing shortages and just responding in a more timely fashion, and allowing the law enforcement to respond to criminal activity and not necessarily, this type of a crisis.
And so let me just quickly speak to, thank you, Representative Smith. Let me just quickly speak to the local match side, the current match side. So we're in the middle of our budget cycle. In transparency, there's not a current match. Doesn't potentially mean there won't be, but I'm trying to be We're trying to be very transparent. I think you'll see the public safety, as you saw, is one of our priorities and a focus. And so we'll have those conversations in the budget as if there is a local funding source, we'll make sure you're updated on that as well. Other questions, comments on this?
No, I would just love to read. I think it's essential and it's necessary. I would just love to read more about it, find out more about it.
And Representative Colvin, as I said, our intent is as we kind of come through this was to be a conversation with you all to see where your appetite is, and then we will kind of frame up some of these one-pagers and make sure that you have that detailed information.
Thank you.
We'll go ahead and move to the next one, digital dispatch. So digital dispatch, and I'm going to let Commissioner Tyson talk a little bit about this one, but let me set the stage. So in a 911 scenario, joint 911 scenario, having the digital dispatch, so this is the main unit, the main part of this is funded through the 911 fund. But what we see is the digital equipment that has to be at the truck or in the station level. That's a lot with our volunteer fire departments. So right now we're working with the Chiefs Association, and previously previous delegations have helped fund fire safety here. And so what we're looking to do is help offset some of the costs for those digital dispatch for those volunteer fire departments. They're about $30,000 to $35,000 each. And so we're estimating around $500K. That's also including backups and the things that they need. But this would be a way that we can augment and help our local volunteer fire associations. Commissioner Tyson, if you just add any additional information as fire commissioner.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this resource currently, if you know about dispatch, you know that you have an intake dispatcher and then you have a dispatcher that actually has to dispatch whatever resources you're sending out. And so there's a time lag in between the two where you have the dispatcher that's taking the information in, and then once that information is coded and received, it goes over to that other dispatcher desk. What this is going to do is it's going to allow real time, so as that dispatcher is putting that information in, this is going to automatically send to that the fire department, the EMS, whatever resource is being dispatched, and let them know, hey, you've got to call. The other component to this is it lets the fire chiefs be able to have input into the resources that go out based on the response. So the current protocol at work, it's called AVL, it actually doesn't take into account a lot of the factors. For example, you have a working structure fire, it's going to dispatch the closest next available unit. Well, it may be in a rural part of the county that doesn't have fire hydrants, and so that truck arrives and it's got a low capacity on its water tank, for example. So this will allow each chief to kind of tailor their response, so when that call comes in, the resources that they need to deal with that incident is more adequate and tailored for that use. So it's a very good solution that's going to decrease our response times as that information's coming in, and it's going to give that information to our first responders a lot faster.
Thank you, Commissioner Tyson. Questions from representatives or senator?
Sounds good.
All right, we'll go ahead and move forward to our next local funding request. So as we look at the mental health and substance abuse in Applewhite in our community, what we're looking to do is this would expand our comprehensive mental health and substance use treatment services for youth. We know we're looking at adults and youth, and this is mental health is a priority for this board. But when we look at youth, providing individual counseling, case management, crisis intervention, family support, and some school-based programs that we know some of the school systems are already doing. So this would be a way that we could leverage some additional dollars that are already here, working with our school system, as well as DSS and mental health. And I'm going to let the Vice Chairwoman get into a little bit more detail, but this would help us expand services. And then I'm going to open it up and let our manager talk a little bit about it, or one of our assistant managers talk about it as well. Vice Chairwoman.
Thank you so much, and this is definitely a passion for me because I work as a qualified mental health professional and have years of experience in this particular area. And it's an honor to be able to serve for the commissioners on the Alliance Board of Health as well as the Public Health Board. And I'm glad to see that we do have our Executive Director, Dr. Green, in the corner, as well as also we have a Director for our Veterans Affairs, Eric Rediger, in the back. The reason I bring this up is because suicide is definitely a high rate for people suicide rates are also high for certain groups of people, including veterans, individuals living in rural areas, children and youth, individuals with autism spectrum disorder, and individuals who identify as LGBTQ. So that means, of course, no doubt our community is impacted a great deal because, as we know, we are the second or the first largest military base right here. We are a military community, which is Fort Liberty. And then there's, of course, no doubt, several rural areas because we do represent the county. And so we need to be mindful, especially with youth, the suicide rate. You do have in here, these were my personal notes, but I thought that was important in case you want to know. I'm a data type of girl. I like to do research. So the research has shown that, unfortunately, in North Carolina, suicide rates have gone up about 30%, and here in Cumberland County as well. So we want to definitely make sure that we keep our youth safe, and that is definitely a concern because no doubt suicide is that of a mental challenge when you have individuals that become depressed. And when we look at the stats also, unfortunately, it is in North Carolina, no doubt, problematic in all communities, but we are definitely understaffed when it comes to social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors, and teachers, and so we need to definitely be mindful. So even though this is a national pandemic, you can say, with mental challenges, we're here to discuss that, the concern and needs of that more so here in Cumberland County. And when we speak of also suicide, when we speak about keeping children safe, 50% of children that commit suicide are from firearms. Unfortunately, from firearms not being locked up like they need to be. That's a whole nother subject matter, but we do need to be mindful. I'm sure we're all in agreement that safety is the #1 theme when we talk about mental health, and 50% of suicides, unfortunately, do come from firearms. And then when we also talk about this is Black History Month, you know, there's a waiting list here in general at Cape Fear, as well as also on the military base. So we have soldiers that are serving their country that have to wait 90 days sometimes to get an appointment, as well as family members when it comes to wanting to be able to see someone from PTSD, depression, and we all serve on the Board of Trustees, so we've discussed this, all the commissioners, we have the opportunity to serve on the Board of Trustees at Cape Fear, and so we appreciate, you know, that of the services that are in place, but definitely there's a great need. And then, as I stated, with this being Black History Month, many times African Americans, they want to be treated by someone that looks like them. They feel more comfortable. And as the stats show, you can see that, I'm not going to read all this, that there's only 5% of U.S. psychologists that are African American. So that means that if you want a preference and you feel more comfortable for whatever needs you're going through, then that's also a great concern because there's only 2% and 4% of Americans that are African Americans that are actually psychiatrists or psychologists. And so that's another, you know, concern for the African American community here in Cumberland County. So primarily the ask is pretty much evident. The increase, we do appreciate that of what the state level has done. There's, again, you know, I can't emphasize enough with the shortage, the North Carolina Department of Public Instructions, they came out with the report. And according to the same report from North Carolina Department, in 2023 and 2024 school year, there's only one school counselor for every 361 students. The recommendation is one for every 250 students. The data also shows that there's only one school nurse for every 833 students, and the recommendation is one nurse for every school. So this is well below the national recommendation from the U.S. Department of Education that, of course, no doubt, provides their recommendations to Cumberland County school system and North Carolina public school in general. And you don't have to worry about taking notes there, it's already in here. So that's why we are asking what we are asking. And I'm open for any questions.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. Before we open up for questions, County Manager or one of your assistants that want to.
One of the issues that we keep experiencing within our community is that law enforcement is having to deal with mental health issues not only in the detention center, but also in the emergency rooms. Staff is going to evaluate the need of having an additional facility that we could construct within the community that will provide both temporary services for both adult and children. A temporary stay behavioral health center that will alleviate this issue moving forward.
Vice Chairman.
And I did also want to add that some people are aware, but many people are not, for those that are listening. We do have a mental health court, but the problematic problem is the fact that there's not enough staffing, although we are looking into a pilot program that can hopefully provide, and fundings can hopefully go in that area as well. We do have here in Cumberland County, like I stated, for those that don't know, a mental health court. We are not able to provide, unfortunately, as many services or have as many cases going to that particular court because it comes down to, again, needs of funding support and that of needing of staff. And we are happy about an up-and-coming pilot program, but no doubt, grant funding is limited, and we would want something that could be sustainable and long-term, because that's another issue and problem is that many individuals that, have mental health challenges, there's not enough case management. So where do we go now? In other words, if an issue happens and you are in need of mental health, the problem is, what is the after plan? If you have to go to court and then you have a case manager, when it comes to workforce housing, not enough need for individuals. And even with opium addiction, many people with mental health have drug problems, not all, but that's a separate issue in itself of which, we need to consider. I am pleased that in November, we did open a recovery center for opiate users here through Cumberland County. Appreciate Dr. Green and her staff being able to do that. We also have a community assessment that you can find online through our Cumberland County Department that states also that our community is aware of this, and the fact that mental health is one of the number one key pillars of that of what the community found in this assessment to be a great concern.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. Commissioner Adams.
I'm gonna just be brief. As we talk about this, I think you'll find out it's a statewide issue, and you may find some of the people that in the legislature have some of these same issues. We just for instance, we got a email, all of us commissioners, from a doctor up in Raleigh as the manager talks about the jail situation, the IVC transportation issue of trying to get somebody with an IVC, which is an involuntary commitment through law enforcement. This is a statewide issue. So as we talk about these mental health issues, the youth and mental health, all of these mental health issues are statewide issues, and I think you'll be able to find, and if we can kind of designate some of this as a pilot program so we can make it so that the entire state understands, oh, this does work. They've done best practices, and now you can use this to be able to do this. And I think that's how the sale is at the state level when we talk about some of these issues. You'll find sheriffs all over the state's going to talk to you about the IVC issue. You probably already heard it. I see y'all shaking your head. And so as we try to sell this, I think we are on the front line, this county, of doing some of that stuff with Dr. Green, the mental health and all of those, to be able to do a serious pilot program for the entire state, to be able to fund that, to be able to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Vice Chairwoman, give it 1 second, Vice Chairwoman.
And I do have one more thing that I'd like to add, and I do appreciate the North Carolina Child Fatality Task Force, because that commission there, of course, they study the deaths among people younger than 18 years old, and they advocate for ways to prevent them. I know that they did, for some of you I know that are new to the state, but many of you back in April received their annual report, and it was stating in there the actual breakdown. So if you want to know as far as the suicide rates and that, of also, like I stated, when it comes to fire safety. But I would encourage you to go back and review that. That's where I got a lot of my information, and they definitely do a great job when it comes to reports and keeping up with the status numbers. And those of you that have joined the, no doubt, the legislative, I definitely would encourage you to continue to support them. And I just wanted to make sure that we give a positive shout out to the North Carolina Child Fatality Task Force, because their commission is doing a great job in regards to being able to do the data status for us and making sure that we work collectively as a body together.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. I'm going to open it up to the representative and senator, and then we'll come back to Commissioners. Representative Smith.
Sure. No, I think this is a really important piece as we move forward. Do we have telehealth capabilities? Can we offer telehealth services, mental health, substance abuse treatment services?
Yes, we can.
And then, and that's great, but I think along with that, we have to look at broadband expansion, and then also what about mobile units for those who can't access telehealth services, especially in our rural areas? Do we have that kind of a mobile unit to? Okay.
And we do have that through Behavior Alliance, and we have partnership with them. They offer tele.
Representative Smith, also, so as we're looking at this, I want to say it's not that we're void of any of these services. This is what we're looking to do is, again, as a tier 1 community in a low tax base, we're looking where we can have additional dollars to invest further in this based on the demographics of our community. And then also to Commissioner Adams' point and to the Vice Chairwoman's point, we can kind of set the model for the rest of the state in some of these key areas. And so as we build this out, your appetite for the dollar amount, then we would come back and say, okay, we would do this, based on the appetite for your dollar amount. And I know there'll be more programs and services than you guys have dollars. So we wanted to kind of put a mark on the wall that then we would come back and frame that up for you. Senator Applewhite?
Yes. Yeah, I have a great appetite for that one. Yeah, of all of those listed, that's probably one of the most critical. One of the things that I want to add on to this, we talk about all of the issues that you mentioned, Vice Chair, are important. One of the things that I'm hearing more from teachers, we have a hard time recruiting and maintaining teachers. The violence that teachers are experiencing in our schools has to be addressed. And I, quite frankly, I don't know how that happens when I speak to teachers that say, yeah, pay is an issue, but the kind of violence that is happening with children in our schools that clearly having mental health challenges has to be dealt with, because we cannot move the bar. It's like a whole circle. How do we get these excellent schools that you talked about and we can't recruit teachers? Just last week, I won't name the school, a teacher was taken out on a stretcher from a school. And I just hope that with all of the programs that you all have, and I know that there are many, we've talked about that, Mr. Chair, that has got to somehow get to the top of it. You know, I've spoken out about, opportunity scholarships, but it's getting to the point where, well, I kind of get it, why people are taking their kids out of public schools, because there is a mental health crisis in our public schools that teachers no longer want to teach anymore. So I hope that somehow this money somehow addresses that issue in a very important way. Vice Chair, you mentioned about gun violence, and we've run that legislation again and again, storage issues. So I will say to the board and to anyone that's listening, you see where our votes are, but as the chair said, some bills go to die, and they never see the light of day. I can't tell you the amount of, gun storage bills that have gone through the General Assembly, and they never go anywhere. So it's not just up to us. I'll sponsor anything, but we need the voice of the boards, and particularly people that are listening, if we're serious about this. So thank you.
Senator Applewhite, I'll tell you, one of the things that we saw with the school board on Friday, and they talked about, because we had a long conversation, Vice Chairwoman was very vocal about the youth mental health piece of this, and they have teams. They have a team within the school board or within the school system that kind of addresses this. It's made up of about 6 personnel. It's with grant dollars, and those dollars are going to run out. So I'm not saying this is what we do, but that's an example of what we would do with a Form A in the school, directly impacting case management, working, and so that would be an example of how we would use this $4 million to enhance or extend some of the great programs that are already in place.
Absolutely support this.
Vice Chairwoman.
And I'd like to add to that, because the particular mental health team that Cumberland County actually has, they've already informed us that their grant is about to run out, which is a federal grant. So this is a major concern, and they're already understaffed, as we stated, social workers and counselors. And as Commissioner Adams stated, we realize and understand that this is definitely, a national problem for everyone as well as a state problem. But we're definitely no doubt here today to advocate for Cumberland County, and with them making, I'm glad that we had their meeting with them before we had our meeting with you, because we were all on one alliance as we are today, that mental health is at the forefront. I'd encourage everyone, when you use the opportunity as well, to look at the community assessment that was done by our public health department. It can be found online because it actually breaks down the percentages. And the great news is that because we can all collectively, not just we as leaders, elected officials here at the table, but when you have an assessment and the survey that was provided, the community even as well as, that was one, like I said, at the top front, so they're aware of this. And I feel like with these dollars as well, we need to make sure that there's more education and town halls. We will do our part to make sure that we get that out as well. Many people don't realize that. We realize that, but we need to educate our community on that, because it does make a difference. Prevention does make a difference when it's impact. And I tell people all the time, even with suicide, it's not about, it's not about trying to disarm anyone. Guns are there to protect, but knowledge and education to use guns safely is what the key is. And so we just want to make sure we collectively, we appreciate you all, understanding it. This is more or less an ask to make sure that we increase, although we definitely appreciate what's already been done by other legislators.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. Commissioner Tyson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had the pleasure, and I'm glad to see the director of the health department here. I had the pleasure of going and touring their facility, and I just wanted to echo what the vice chairwoman said. We were able to review the health needs assessment. I would ask that we provide that to our delegation. That would be one of the asks that I have. But there was a study that came out in Forbes, and I shared this with some people, that puts North Carolina as the most expensive state in the country for health care. And when you look at it's no wonder that the number one response that we had in our study was the affordability of health care. And so, to the chairman's point, this is not just a Cumberland County issue, it is a state level issue. And making sure that we're not only trying to tackle this by ourselves, but working with our key stakeholders in the community as well, so that we're looking at a comprehensive approach is very important. So I just wanted to echo that, what the vice chairwoman said, and say that I vigorously support, what she's presented, and the results in the study bear that out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Tyson. Representative Whately, did you have something?
Just quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
This is probably almost an absolute necessary, not wanting to do just put it out there, because I serve on the health committee. I also am on the child fatality task force. People don't know how many other committees we all serve on. And my hair is grayer, not only seeing what happens, but seeing that the results seem to continually be the same. We used to have a mental health hospital here. When I worked in the emergency room, a few years ago, we had somewhere that we actually had doctors, they staffed it. You ask me today, do I know who the mental health doctors are here in town? I can't tell you. And I also was very fortunate to help counselors be able to join a compact where they could continue helping their patients until they could get established with another physician. And even with all the things we continue to do, I could talk the language just like all of us can, but we have a mental health crisis and we have to address it. So I think there's a lot of appetite to do this and for us to work on it.
Thank you, Representative Wheatley. And I want to make sure the delegation understands, so this is our ask of you. We also have been having conversations around that mental health ecosystem and where it is. So you see our hospitals, our jails, You know, where do people go? Where's that connection point versus, you know, hospital or law enforcement or in our detention centers and these other places? Where can they begin to get help and get pointed in the right direction? And so that's another conversation this board's having. So know that there's a continued focus on the mental health. We saw this as an opportunity from the youth side to invest in specifically in that area with state dollars. There may be a time when we come back to you and talk about the mental health ecosystem. We've got to get our hands around that first in defining what that looks like, what our needs are. But you heard the manager talk about that center. There's not one here, and you just heard Representative Wheatley say that. And so those are conversations we're having, and you'll hear more about that. This was just a specific around that youth mental health and substance abuse. So we'll go ahead and move unless there's other questions. I want to be mindful of time. I know we started a little bit late. We're going to move into, so no more money question, no more money question. I get it. You can take a deep breath now. And we'll move to the local policy objectives. Start by saying number one is one you've heard before, but I want to frame it in a different way for you so you can understand the need for us or where it will help us. So when they look at the supplemental state funds for the teachers, it doesn't factor in that ADM. And so that's a missing piece. And I know the school board talked to you about that. And so our advocacy for that is that if we did factor in ADM, then we would have the ability, our local supplement that we invest, which is low, would potentially go farther. We'd have a larger supplement, combined supplement between the state and local. And when we make a further investment, and I think you'll see a board that will want to make a further investment in the local supplement, those dollars will go more. So right now, when we look at our 14, and I know Marshall is not the smaller group, excuse me, Commissioner Fairclough, but when we look at the regional, 14 regional, we are at the lowest for overall supplement. And that's because it's it's part of that state supplement, so we need help there. But if we turn around and invest, which I believe this board will, more than $1,500 from the local, I mean $3,500 from a local supplement, if we had more of that state supplement, that's going to make our match dollars go further. And we can then recruit and retain the teachers we need here so they're not driving across the lines. And that's what we need to do. And so if that ADM is figured into it, then our local match, which right now is about $3,500, we think we can hopefully increase that. There's a potential to increase that. But if the state fixes that formula, Cumberland's unique in the sense that we're kind of caught in the middle. We're not rural, we're not urban, and we get caught in the middle a little bit. So encourage you to really look at that. I know the school board has talked to you about that, but for us, what it means for us is our local supplement will mean more because we're giving more than a lot of these counties, but because of the lower state, it's making our total supplement lower. Where we still want to do more, we just want our dollars to go further. So that's what we're asking for the policy help when it comes to this. And for all I care, run a local bill and just make it Cumberland County. I know it's a statewide issue, but it'll help our local supplement go further and allow the investment I think that we were asked for on Friday, and what I think this board will do as we move into the budget season to again enhance those dollars that we're already putting in and keep our teachers here and invest more in our teachers here locally and maybe even recruit some additional ones to fill these vacancies that we know we have. Representative Smith.
You sort of hit it when you were speaking. I was thinking to myself, and I don't know if anyone just knows this offhand. What is a similarly situated county to us? Like who else?
Name a county. Robeson, name a county.
Not just regionally. I mean, like with our size.
I got it. This is what I'm ready for.
I mean, who is if we're thinking this is a statewide policy change? Who is another? What's another county? Other representatives of the senators we can work with who would want this kind of change also? Then you mentioned it being a local bill, and so you sort of going where I was going. I was just wondering, what's another county that's in this kind of situation with us?
Representative says probably New Hanover. I would encourage you to talk to Dr. Conley and his staff. And really, in this book, and in a presentation they gave us, it outlines some of that. But I would think a New Hanover County is probably, you know, in that realm.
Probably Onslow.
In Onslow as well, there was a couple of them that had.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the military component,
Right.
it's the demographic, it's really that tier one. It's that.
Tier 1 in size.
Yeah, tier one is size of the student population, because that's what happens. So these smaller rural areas that have 400 students are getting more than Cumberland is because of the volume of students. Correct. And again, the school system has advocated for that. For us, it's about how we can make our local investment go further. And actually, if we increase our supplement, because across these 14 regions, we're in the top 2, top 3. So our dollars could go further. And if we make an investment even further, which I think we will, I'm not speaking for the entire board, I'm just saying I think we will based on the appetite, then we can be, again, that regional leader in education and investing in our teachers. Vice Chairman.
I don't want to shift gears here, but since we invest in our teachers, I don't want to get too much into it. But let's be mindful also when it comes to childcare that came up at the Board of Education, is that the teachers themselves, that's one reason why they're also leaving, is that they're in need. They're here to try to teach and, you know, educate our children, but yet they're not able, you know, to be able to sustain affordable childcare. So let's just be mindful of that piece as well. And that came up a lot as far as housing, affordable housing for teachers to be put in place, as well as childcare, perhaps facilities to be built for teachers to be able to utilize for their children. So just wanted to be mindful of childcare.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Commissioner Patel and then Commissioner Tyson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think one of the concerns over the past couple of weeks that I've been able to, especially after our meeting with the school board, and we asked from the supplement side, for example, there, obviously, I don't want to speak for the full board, but I believe we genuinely want to increase those supplements from local capacity. But there's a point where when we look at the need for our actual infrastructure costs that, you know, over just the next 7 years can be over $300 million, and that's not going to meet the full need that we have. And we've asked for data on multiple things, but one of the questions that we did have was, when we look at our peer counties, where does the marginal benefit continue to increase before we get to a point of diminishing returns? And so that's something that we hope to get some data back and we can share with you. But I genuinely think when we look at just supplements, I don't know if we can solve that, because a lot of factors that are coming into play are, you know, the teachers, childcare, the teacher safety concerns, the educator safety concerns, and then when we step back even further from that, we have a large need for recruitment in so many different areas of our community, servicing wise, from our sheriff, local municipality, police forces, et cetera, our Cape Fear Valley system, our health department. So there's a lot of factors going into this, so we just need to understand what the full picture needs to look like.
Thank you, Commissioner Patel. Commissioner Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to echo what the chairman said. Without the ADM really taken into account, the current formula does provide an advantage to smaller counties. And I just did some quick back of napkin math with what I was provided by our school system. So I just went to our surrounding counties. And so, for example, every $1,000 increase in the supplement for Robeson County is a $1.627 million budgetary consideration. For Harnett, it would be 1.5. For Sampson, it would be 601,000, but for us, it's 2.8 million. So, you know, when you're looking at tools in your toolbox of how you can keep and retain qualified educators, not just the size of the population, but the size of the staff that you have to be able to service those students also has to be taken into account. And so by changing that formula, it would really kind of help alleviate some of that burden that we're looking at here locally. Thank you.
Okay. actually, I'm sorry, and I did want to say one thing. I want to shift back here, but I also want to be mindful, just in regards to teachers and even specialty teachers for those that have ADA needs, special needs. Should have mentioned that probably back in mental health, but that's a component too. A lot of teachers that have specialty that they feel like, as far as teachers' compensations, when you're dealing with children with disabilities and special needs, let's be mindful. In general, there's a lack in that area of with staffing, but then also the need of other things that they're in need of. So.
Representatives, senators? Senator
Last
Farmer?
comment, last week we had the opportunity to meet with Mo Green, DPI, and we brought up a comment, I brought up a comment that I didn't know about when we met with the school board in terms of special needs children, since Fort Liberty is a preferred assignment for soldiers who have special needs children. He was not aware of that, so he is reaching out to Dr. Conley to address how he can address that and look at federal support for that. So that was a great collaboration.
Thank you.
Any other comments on the first policy initiative? We'll go ahead and move to the second one. You've heard this before, so you've heard this at the city side. You've heard it from this board before. We just ask for your continued advocacy for expansion of the passenger rail connectivity, and that's the connectivity, of course, Fayetteville to Raleigh, Fayetteville to Wilmington. Questions on that? I know y'all have seen that one before. Or any other comments from commissioners? We'll move to the next one, I-685 through Fayetteville and Cumberland County. Again, just support and advocacy for this route as our selected route versus the alternate route that would go through Dunn. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this and have heard about this important piece. This is an opportunity that we need to make sure we don't miss, and so that advocacy at the state level, as you're talking to DOT and others, to ensure that this route goes through. We're continuing to do some work here at the local level to ensure that we're postured for it, and we've got multiple commissioners on the different transportation boards. Commissioner Patel, anything you wanted to add on this one?
Right now, I think one of the things we've got to understand is what would differentiate this 685 corridor from the benefit for the state in general from not having it go through Harnett and coming through Cumberland. And one big portion of that, I would say, is force readiness and making sure that we create a little bit of a gap between 40 and 685 when we are looking from going to east to west across our state.
Commissioner Adams, I know you've been involved in this. Want to make sure we get your voice as well.
And I guess everybody understands what that 6I-85 corridor, which is that economic corridor, which makes sense. And I think Robert will tell you, Van Giens, that they're holding stakeholder meetings all over from Harnett County and Cumberland County. So if anybody is involved in that, please send it in to the commission that's going to make the recommendation. But I think Commissioner Patel is exactly right, is that if you're talking about an economic corridor, and they're talking about getting to Wilmington, they've already done the top part, it makes sense to come past the largest military installation in the world. Now, there are, and I think we have to be, kind of know that there is some issue, especially when you get around that Spring Lake-ish area, as to how you get around Spring Lake with that 685, and there has to be some discussion about that, because there's going to have to be some infrastructure as you do that. But I think this is with the mega site that we have one of the last mega sites in the state, makes sense to just come through here. And I think we've been pushing this, thanks to the Longleaf Realtors Association, which has been on board with this for better part than 2 years, trying to push this to make sure it comes through this area.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. And I know some of you serve on transportation, and you can have those conversations with the DOT board. I had a conversation with Chairman Fox this weekend, and so we're actively engaging. Our hidden gem, as you well know, is Fort Liberty, and that connection, as Commissioner Patel talked about. So just your continued advocacy on this, and also your continued awareness. So if there's something that you're hearing happen up there, ensure you're connecting it down to us. And we've got, again, a direct focus on how we're trying to keep this at the forefront and make sure this decision, even though it's going to be a very long-term project, we want to make sure that we don't miss this opportunity, and we are positioned the way we need to for it. Any comments or questions on this?
I do a brief comment. As I read about the other communities that are advocating for it, they had the big, what do you call, a presser, well, what do you mean, everybody signs on to it and they send it out to the media? I don't know, what do you call it? Like a resolution, yeah. I didn't see that Cumberland had did it. Have we done?
FAMPO did one, which is all the municipalities on FAMPO, which is the Fayetteville Area Metropolitan. They did a resolution to send up on that to the federal delegation as well as to the state DOT and all of those. So yeah, there was a resolution, and that included everybody, Spring Lake, Hope Mills, all of us in that region to be able to.
And there was another resolution done recently, I believe.
And I think the county we might have done
We
one.
weren't
I
included.
think Commissioner Keith pushed one.
Well, look, the delegation didn't know about it, so I'm just saying.
We'll make sure you get that.
And like, I say we go full court press, like bring everybody, the county, the city, the Fort Liberty, the kids, the pets, everybody out and say why this county is it, right? So let's make a big deal.
Senator Applewhite, I think you're exactly right, and what we're trying to do is be at the point of decision and where the decision is going to happen. So there's two decisions at the state level, in influencing the areas that y'all can help us influence, but then it's going to be a federal level connection point as well. And so we're being very deliberate and mindful about making sure we're at the point of decision, to use a military term that I know you understand, being at that point of decision and being able to affect it, and then affecting it at the state level. But we'll continue with resolutions and kind of that public, when it's appropriate for that public kind of push.
Haven't pushed the governor yet. Right.
And he may be new to it because.
Well, we'll get him on. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Senator Applewhite, that's my exact point. Where you can influence, we appreciate the assistance and influence. And I know you serve on transportation now, so having those conversations when you do on board with Chairman Fox, this is an opportunity to kind of drive that home, as well as with your colleagues in the Senate.
Thank you.
Any other questions on 685? We'll go ahead and move to the next. Again, I'm trying to be mindful of your time. We've got 3 more items we'll move through. Volunteer Fire Department Services Contract. This is a specific local ask potentially, and I know, and I hate Senator McInnes is not here. He looked at this last session, I believe, and it's something that we need to move forward. This really deals with our volunteer fire departments and the services they provide to municipalities when there's annexation happening, ensuring that they have the opportunity to have some time to finish those contracts out so they're not cut off, and that's a revenue shift for those fire departments. And I'm going to let our fire commissioner talk a little bit more detail about it, but in essence what we're looking for is when that annexation happens, even if it's voluntarily, because the language of the statute is a little vague, that they get a time period, that there's a commitment for those volunteer fire departments to be able to carry through. So it's not a first right of refusal, but there's a conversation about it. Whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 2 years, that's a conversation we can all have. We just want to make sure it's on your radar screen, because it's beginning to impact, as our communities grow, it's beginning to impact our volunteer fire departments. Commissioner Tyson.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, we've seen in some of our areas where there is an annexation that'll take place, as the chairman said, and when that annexation occurs, that fire tax revenue then gets reallocated. And so if that department that was servicing that area before is still coming out for calls of service, then they've lost that revenue for them to be able to continue to get that funding, if that makes sense. So they have to make up for that with the rest of the revenue that they had. And so what this would do is if you're going to go out and you're going to annex an area, and then you're going to get that revenue you can't continue just to put the burden on the other fire department for those calls of service and not have a revenue piece attached to that. And so that's, this is a issue that we've had presented during our Chiefs Association meetings, that a lot of our rural chiefs and chiefs in our unincorporated areas have stressed that has been a concern of theirs, and it just is creating a little bit of a funding gap there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Adams?
And I think, and that's great, because that's one of the issues. I think Representative Wheatley and I have talked about this other issue too, which is when you're out on I-95 or even I-40 and the rural fire departments is the first ones that get out there, they're the only ones that don't get paid. Everybody else, and if you're in this sphere, when you get ready to get there and they do a circle, in that circle, you can't leave until everything's cleaned up. They are responding out on 95, 295, they don't get reimbursed. And it's just not us, this is a statewide issue. I bet you, Representative Wheatley and I've had this, you know, as to wherever you are, on I-40, all up 95, if a rural fire department goes out there, you know, it costs them time, it costs them gas, costs them all of that. That's something I think that the state needs to look at in terms of some reimbursement for those volunteer fire departments stuff like that.
And to add to that, we won't speak about the phone that she used either.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that too, yes.
And just for, I believe there's some statewide legislation that's been filed around it, as I understand it. But it is an issue, and if it's not addressed statewide, wrap it into this local bill. If this is a local bill, we greatly appreciate it. It would help our volunteer fire departments in their, you know, just in their growing capacity and their need for additional dollars or reimbursement. We'll go ahead and move forward. Two final local policy initiatives we want to talk about. The first one being gun violence prevention and awareness. And so just ask, again, supporting legislation and funding associated with actions related to prevention and awareness. Again, just your support and continued advocacy for that. And I'll let the Vice Chairwoman Jones add some additional context.
Well, my primary thing is, since we've touched bases on it before, is main thing is definitely want to keep everyone safe, especially our youth. And the handout that you all do have, these were my personal notes, but I do like data. You can at your own leisure, as many of you know, that information, page 2 and 3, it just gives the stats in reference to the increase of, unfortunately, guns and the increase of the rate of suicide. So that you can read on your own. And that have also, as Senator Applewhite stated, you know, we have to be concerned about that of violence and a lot of children. And even in this study, it states that it only takes less than 5 minutes for children to get a hold of their parents' guns when without, of course, no doubt, the parents' permission when they're not in the home. So one of the actions that we're going to take here, and I feel like I'm glad that our overall board's in agreement with, we've talked about on different occasions, is to that of community actions of having more town halls. And studies show that that does work when you engage your community and get involved with nonprofits. And also, we are back active with the city and county, just for an update for those who are listening and those in here, the city and county liaison committees, we are meeting once a month, and we will have a meeting, as a matter of fact, this month, and we'll make sure to put you all on, we know you all have busy schedules, but we'll make sure that you all are on the invite list, because the meeting for March, as a matter of fact, is going to be that for the city and county liaison is wrapped around public safety, and we will have someone from the city police department that's going to provide a presentation as far as the different stats and crime and where we're at and where we need, you know, strengths and weaknesses, and the same on the sheriff's department. So you all will definitely get an invite to moving forward all of the city county liaison committee meetings, and those at the times when you can come, then we greatly appreciate that. And we understand in the times that you can't, but we'd make sure that you get that information. So, and then in regards to the next one on here, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead.
That's right. So let me talk the next. Any questions on the gun violence prevention and awareness, just the advocacy and support around it?
Do we have anything like that, like in our kids they learn things like stop, drop, and roll and stranger danger? Do we have anything like that in our elementary schools? Because kids will really pick up on that? Some sort of campaign or awareness?
I can't speak to it. I don't know if there's one of the commissioners can speak to it. Commissioner Vice Chairman
Perhaps
Jones?
partnering with a nonprofit and having, that wouldn't cost us anything, but kids are, you put stuff in kids' backpacks to take it home and have assemblies about it. They're pretty good at picking that stuff up in an early stage. It's just a thought.
I've had a meeting with Dr. Conley, and not per se a program like that, but we're hoping to be able to have a campaign. But I do know that there are some safety as far as, stop the violence. He does allow sometimes, of course, they go through policy. Nonprofits have went into the school to talk to the different elementary and middle schools, but I have had conversations with him. We're hoping to hopefully develop a partnership to do something as far as a campaign.
And Senator Applewhite, I believe there's a few programs. I don't know them off the top of our head. Maybe we can arm you with some of that information, both from the school and maybe from the public safety side as well. We'll look at that for you.
A few constituents have asked how would that be put back into a curriculum. I don't know how to do all of that, like an official teaching thing. Probably not, but just something fun that makes kids aware, like, don't touch mommy's gun, something.
Any other questions on this local policy? We'll move to the next one. So this one is around, and the Vice Chairwoman spoke to it a little bit briefly. It's kind of tied to a couple of the other components. You can see this is around, individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, decreasing support for decreasing those wait times for the innovation waivers, the Medicaid home and community-based services, for those individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So this is, again, advocacy for it. As we look at even local funding from a standpoint of that $4 million, how we kind of can affect that as well. I'll let the Vice Chairwoman give you some more context on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would ask that you do turn to page 4 if you just counted, they're not numbered. Page 4 is going to say mental health Medicaid waiver, North Carolina SLOTS programs at the top. I do think that just going to spend a little bit of time on here, but this is important. And for the listeners out there, the North Carolina Innovations Waiver is a federally approved 1915 Medicaid home and community-based services, and is designed to meet the needs of individuals with intellectual or developmental disabilities, which is known as IDD, who prefer to get long-term care services and supports in their home or community instead of that from institutional settings. And so this is important, and I can say this, I appreciate that you all have pre-approved this, and it says July 2023, but actually it was July 2024. The Medicaid Innovation Waiver supports, again, individuals. They want to have more, lifestyle independency on their own. And so what happens is, there's of course no doubt a criteria if you have special needs, a disability, and when you apply, there's only a limited number of slots that can help you with these particular services. So as the chairman stated, our goal and ask is, we're very appreciative that the state has put something in place in Medicaid to have the states, but the limited number of, that's what the issue problem is. It's like, we know there's a big need for the services, but when you have a limited amount of slots available, then that means individuals who, have challenges or are in need aren't able to get these services. So looking at some way that you all could perhaps expand. And then there's been some changes also. Don't want to get too much into the perspectives of policies and procedures, but I would encourage individuals out there listening too. There were changes in some of the waivers, and people were concerned if or not they would still qualify. I think that the Department of Health and Human Services does a great job. They have a fact sheet. I'm putting a little disclaimer out there, www.dhhs.gov, and they have a fact sheet on there in regards to individuals that are in these needs that were concerned if their benefits were going to be cut off or not. They have a whole list of what will be covered and walks you through in regards to how to apply. So as the chairman stated, this is something that's of great need. It's in place. So this is more or less an ask of any kind of way, if maybe it can be expanded so those in need, we can have less waiting time and more services can be applied in a more efficient time.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. Commissioner Adams?
Yeah, and I think she's exactly right. The wait time on the innovation waiver is 10 years. You go on it now and you may not get services for 10 years. And during that period of time, when they come and tell you you got to get services, you don't know that you have to go in and get recertified even with that. The whole, and I really do thank the legislature. They did provide some slots in the last session, but they were divided between all of the LMMCOs, so everybody got about 3. And so if you know the need where you are in the state, it's just not enough slots to be able to do that. But if you gotta wait, if you got a child and you gotta wait 10 years, you know, I just think that that's just kind of unacceptable throughout the whole time. This is has been a bone of contention with the LMNs and MCOs in terms of that. They just don't have the slots, but so we need to, we got a whole new DHH secretary, but I think that you just have to provide the funds to be able to create more slots and then equitably do that, because there are some areas that are more needed than other areas, but if you just divvy it up by MCOs, LMEs, doesn't make sense, because if you look at Trillium, which has 32 counties, okay, and but they don't have as many people as Alliance, which has all of the urban areas, which is Mecklenburg, Cumberland, and all of those who are on that Medicaid waiver. We just got to be able to look at that, to be able to determine that. It's parents throughout this community have talked about it for a long time, just trying to get into one of those slots. So I think for a policy reason, this is something that just needs to be looked at overall.
Vice Chairwoman.
And I want to add, because they cover so many things, I won't go into detail with a lot of those, but also some of the services, especially, there's a great stigma, but many people that have mental health challenges or disabilities, they can still work. And in through this program, those are some of the key issues and key great services. They help to identify employment needs through pre-employment phases. They help to assess and maintain employment for stabilization. And so, again, I'm glad that he supported me on and the whole board in regards to, just as the chairman was stating, if you're waiting and you're someone that, wants to work, of course, with accommodations and then just the other needs. And it's not, and then there's also the factor, because we're from a military town, they also provide services for individuals that have spinal issues and brain trauma issues. So we just want to be mindful to keep that on your radar of consideration if there's any way possible to be able to expand those services. And when we look at the piece of, again, being a military community, being able to provide services for those who've served, as well as that of our community here that's non-military, we have a large capacity of individuals with the needs of special needs and disabilities. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. Any comments from Senator or representatives on this piece? And I'll just say, if you're looking for the local side, pilot, tier 1 community, military, we're glad to pilot the expansion of those slots here for those 2 reasons. So discussion, I wanted to open it up very briefly, again, being mindful of your time. Anything from our state delegation, and then I'll turn over our commissioners, and then I'll close it out very briefly.
Just briefly, we all know about Western North Carolina and how that's going to weigh on our budget. I would recommend myself, and the rest of the delegation might want to speak to this, that you might want to prioritize from 1 to how many ever, what's most important to you as we work on the budget.
Yeah, I want to echo that as well, prioritizing that. I love the mental health piece, but that's just me. I'm sure you all have your reasons for racking and stacking them, but I want to say thank you for your effort that you put into this. It's well thought out, organized, and gives us some focus. And as far as like our own legislation that we could run, local legislation, I asked anybody just to be clear on what you would like for it to, how the drill goes. When we submitted to bill drafting that, it's saying what you wanted to say. But I just want to say thank you.
Representative Smith.
No, thank you all for the presentation. Enjoyed the conversation. Like Representative Wheatley and Senator Applewhite stated, if you could prioritize your ask, and then to the extent possible, as you get additional details around some of these asks, if you could provide those details of, if the total ask, is 30, 50 million, we can not itemize it to a penny, but have a general idea of how that money's gonna be spent. I think that, I just find that's always helpful than just an arbitrary number, if we can really attach it to specific, parts of the project.
Representative Coleman?
No, nothing specific, Mr. Chairman. Just want to thank you all for taking the time for giving us a framework to all of our efforts. And I do believe that everyone surrounded here at this table and in our delegation truly want the same thing at heart, to make this a better place. So thank you. Thank you all for your leadership.
Thank you, Representative Coleman. Commissioner Tyson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank y'all for coming. I know y'all all very well aware our community has a lot of needs, and coming out of the strategic planning that we did as a board with the staff, we were able to really pinpoint a lot of what we would like to get accomplished. I think one of the biggest takeaways was, how can we move from our Tier 1 designation out of that status? And there was a lot of discussion about that. And so, when you talk about prioritization, I know for me, I would want to see, that become a major priority that we have, is moving out of that designation. And I just also would like to add that the chairman has done a good job of kind of evaluating, what those requirements are. He has initiated discussion with the Department of Commerce about how that rating and some of those weighted metrics and how that may be affecting our county. But thank you for coming and hearing us out. And as you can see, there's just a lot of important issues, and we look forward to getting to work with you. So thank you.
Commissioner Fairclough?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've had the privilege of serving on the Board of Education in Cumberland County. I've had the privilege of serving on the Mental Health Board in Cumberland County for several years. In fact, when we had one, it had a mental health center. And it's no reflection on anybody that's currently serving for us in the General Assembly or has previously served for us in the General Assembly. It's before all of this time, but in the last decade and a half or so, and this is just one commissioner's opinion, from a lot of observation, the General Assembly has tried hard to fix mental health in the state of North Carolina. In my opinion, they've broken it more than they fixed it. And the mental health pieces we've asked about here are a reflection of what something we might used to have had and do not have anymore. And they're trying to fix it at the state level, and somehow or another it's just not trickling down to us, because we get complaints from the citizens and we feel like almost we don't have anywhere to go, at least anywhere that's effective. And from the educational standpoint in this state, I think the more they try to fix it, the more they're killing public education in North Carolina. But that's my opinion, and all of you may not agree. This is prior to your time. I understand that, but and the things we're trying to do at the local level is to keep Cumberland County from completely imploding in our education system. And it's something I'm very concerned about. And thank you for your attention for those things.
Thank you, Commissioner Fairclough.
And the water is none of us' fault. We didn't know there would be chemicals in the water that we could not fix. But anyway, we're working on that too. That's not General Assembly's fault. Thank you for all your help with that.
Thank you. Commissioner Patel?
Just want to thank you guys, thank you all for spending your time with us this morning. We all call Cumberland home, so I know you're aware of all of the issues and agenda items that we need to tackle, and I hope that you welcome us working with y'all. To Representative Wheatley's point, if you could give us, after your delegation speaks, if you can give us some of the priorities that you would like to see from y'all's end and how Raleigh is operating. That way we can try and work as we're planning and going through our budget cycle to make sure that we're matching alongside the way that you need us to. That would be extremely helpful, and also thank you for driving back and forth to Raleigh for us.
Vice Chairwoman Jones.
Yes, I just wanted to thank you all for coming because, of course, we all do what we do to serve our community. And I'm pretty sure the board is in agreement, and I know from working with them that water infrastructure and education, as well as, working affordable housing and that of mental health, public safety, and we cannot leave out economic development. Those are definitely important factors as well as we know there are more, like I said, water infrastructure, education, mental health, public safety, economic development. So I'm just glad that we were able to touch bases and discuss some of those things today. And coming from our strategic planning just about 2 weeks ago, one great thing that we all learned, the importance of follow up, making sure effective communications with other bodies of government, because it does take collaborative village for our community. So I'm looking forward to us all making sure that, the action plan would be to communicate to you all our needs and that of you all supporting of that of what you can. And budget, no doubt, is important, but it's also important for us to show up and be able to support it in our busy schedule. So definitely you all will be on our invite list when it comes to the city and community liaison meetings. I'll make sure that I follow through with that. So again, thank you. I look forward to collectively all of us making sure that we follow up and take actions so that we can help our community to grow and become a better place, quality of life for everyone to stay here. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairwoman. And again, just thank you. When I took over as a chair, one of the things that I talked about is partnerships with our city, our municipalities, our state officials, our school boards, and we sincerely mean that. So we appreciate your time today. Look, I understand there's a lot of issues that we didn't talk about today. We could talk about workforce and childcare and workforce housing and a litany of other things. What we were trying to do today was focus down what we think the connection points are for you as you go into this session. Our hope is, while we laid out some numbers, where's that appetite? So Representative Smith and Representative Wheatley, and to all you, where you asked for that prioritization, it would help if you could give us what's your appetite. We gave you about 128 million. What's the appetite? What do we want? And we can help shape that. So those bigger numbers, 50 million, okay, how can you shape that down? So we'll arm you with some of that information. But my question back to you is kind of what's that appetite? And I understand there's a lot of requirements, but I know y'all are going to fight for Cumberland County and the needs that are down here. And I think what we've shown you are things that impact our everyday lives here and are funding streams that are bundled together with local dollars, with federal dollars. So when you're talking to your colleagues about these asks, it's not just direct money. It's in a bundled format, in a bundled way. So our next steps, what we would like to do from this is we're going to put this into the form of a resolution, and we will approve that here very shortly and provide that back to you. That will be very general in nature, and Representative Smith, I understand you very well. You're a very detailed person, and I know you, so we're going to make sure we frame some of that detail. We're also going to provide you those one-pagers that kind of lay out each of these items and give you some more meat around the bones. We're going to set the framework for the 50, the 65, and the 4 million and those numbers that we gave you. So we'll give you some framework around those. Our ask is, as you're going through the session, I know that local bills are coming up on the 20th on the House side and on the Senate side shortly thereafter. We'll make sure we arm you with that information. But as you begin to see how the budget takes shape and the funding opportunities take shape on your side, we can just communicate back and forth so we can arm you with any additional information that we can provide you. I know sometimes up there's opportunities pop up in a day. Please make sure the quickest way you can reach out to me, but probably connecting with our county manager. Please make sure you've got his information. I can be responsive, but our county manager is going to be extremely responsive based on the different things that I have going on. We want to be a partner in this with you. We're thankful for what you guys can help us do. And you saw our priorities. We tried to lay them out in the best way. There's a lot of other statewide things that we could talk about today. Those are statewide initiatives. Just know that our staff, as I mentioned earlier, will continue to monitor those. And so as we see things moving through the House and the Senate and actually make crossover, then we'll give you some input, or you feel free to always ask us where we stand, and we can speak to you with that in a letter or resolution. But thank you. Yes, ma'am.
If I could say one more thing, these, you know how these bills move really fast. If you all are watching those bills and something is like on fire that we may not have caught, like call us and say, hey, like Senate Bill 50, this is gonna kill us, so I can be like, oh, on alert. So we really rely on you all to watch these bills, because you know the immediate impact to the county, and put it on our radar as our attention is like all over the place.
Understand, and that's kind of my point on how we'll plug back into you. And
Great.
we've got a good team that's can't watch them all because of our capacity, but we'll
Yeah,
try
watch
to
them all.
input as much as we can. I'm going to close out in just a second, but Vice Chairwoman had one more comment.
And we will make sure also, because we have a new structure formula, we've stacked our committees back up, so that way when you contact it, we'll just automatically send it out. We'll make sure that you all get a list of our different committees and who the chairs are in those different committees, as the chairman himself no doubt stays busy, and we all stay busy, and myself. But that way, the communication, because a lot of things now with our new system will filter through to each individual committee, such as the Water Infrastructure Committee, and then we have the Budgeting Committee. So we'll make sure that the list of our committees and our flow of framework, you all will receive the chair, information of those committees and who's the chair of that for communication purposes.
Thank you again. We apologize for going a little bit over. We know your time is valuable. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor, raise your right hand. Madam Clerk, that's unanimous, and we're adjourned.